7 words came out of Steve McQueen's mouth that made the studio halt. Not loudly, not. 7 quiet words that changed everything. Came in the middle of a phrase that shouldn't have been important. The. At first, the audience chuckled. After that, the laughs stopped. 3 feet away, Paul Newman came to a standstill. His hands froze around his cup of coffee, and Johnny Carson, who have spent decades making stillness sound better than anyone else on TV, did something almost impossible to think of. He didn't say anything. 14. It took seconds. No joke, no getting better, no. Cut to a commercial, and then nothing. And in that stillness broke something real. Through. I regularly see people say things like, persons who didn't know they weren't signed up. If you like the channel, please take a moment to check and make sure you are signed up. It's free and it truly helps us keep the show going, getting bigger. Thanks for being a member of this trip with us. To get what? To understand what happened that night, you need to go back. After 1974, you need to go back to the place where the fight started. Not on a movie set, not in a producer's office, but in the quiet math of workplace, but in the quiet math of fame itself. Hollywood in the late. The 1950s had a certain kind of difficulty. It had 2 males who were the same in practically every way. The same man by every criteria that can be measured. Both were in their early 30s. Both of them had faces that cameras loved in a way that felt almost unfair to all the other actors working. Both had a certain kind of stillness that is masculine on screen. The kind that didn't need to make a big deal about it. That sent a message without words. In the space between the lines of discourse. Both had to work hard to get where they were. McQueen had a childhood that was full of change. Between being poor and going to reform school. Through the Marines, through years of little pieces and close calls. Newman through a new type of problem. How hard it was for him to hear that he was handsome. First in gifted, second in spending. Years showing that the order should be turned around. When they were both Newman and the Hustler set up in McQueen's The Great Escape in 1961. By 1963, the comparison had already become a reflex in the business. Every casting talk that has one name in it eventually included the other. Each box, the office number, was compared to the last number that the other man gave. Not either. None of them ever indicated they cared. What you are about to hear comes from the data about 2 genuine lives, their careers that have been written about, their known histories, their private silences, and thinks about the conversation that the proof of those lives always seems to be pointing to. The facts about Paul Newman is genuine. The truth about Steve McQueen is real. The truth about Johnny Carson is genuine. The meeting between them and what was said in its open moments dwell in the space between what we must have a sense of what we know and what we can feel. Been right. That gets us to the huge fire. When Irwin, the producer, Allen started putting together the cast, Newman and McQueen's question was right away and for a few months truly not resolved. Both men desired the movie. The 2 men had the same situation, top billing. What came next was a negotiation noted not for its bitterness, but for its accuracy, not. Not about creative control, but about money. Concerning the size of the font and the shape of two names on a sign. The last. The resolution was beautiful and a little crazy. Same size type, Newman on the McQueen on the left and McQueen on the right. Posters, with McQueen on top. A math tie, a solution that made sense. Of fairness while without affecting the real question in full and on purpose. Not answered. McQueen got the news in his room to get dressed. His helper remembered that he read the memo, put it down, and didn't say anything for almost a sat down and didn't say anything for almost a minute. Then that's fine. Not a thing. Other. This moment seems little right now. It won't in a few minutes. The plan, as it was built by Carson's producers, was clear about one thing. The males would not show up at the same time. McQueen at 5:30 and Newman at 6:15. Two different green rooms, two different entrances, two different time frames. Made to keep them apart until the cameras were already rolling when the way things were set up made conflict not practical. It went on till 5:28 p.m. When Newman's automobile got there, it was 47 minutes late. Early. 1 minute after McQueen, at 5:31, had gone through the south door. Paul Newman was standing 40 feet away in the same hallway. No one has ever completely told me why. His driver offered him at least two distinct stories over the years. What is clear is that the manager saw it happen, and years later. Put it simply, you could feel it. Not see it, feel it, like the air. The pressure changed. Neither man did a scene. McQueen looked up and gave a nod as a kind of welcome. Not saying anything nice. Newman gave it back. They were led away. Individually and with some hurry, too. Their own green rooms, but the index card was already in McQueen's pocket. He had found it under his dressing room door that morning. A white envelope with no name on it in the evening. The front, but no address to send it back to. Inside, one card with 4 words written in block letters. Letters. I'm getting the most attention. McQueen read it once, folded it, and then put it in his pocket, and smiled. That. A calm, controlled smile that never meant what they thought it meant. He didn't. Don't tell anyone about it. The part was set to start at 10:22 p.m. At 10:19, both men were in the wings. Carson was already sitting at his desk and going through his note cards with the calmly practiced by someone who had done this 11,000 times and still regarded each one like it could need something not expected. His producer's voice came through the earpiece with the usual 30-second warning. Johnny, then be silent. Both of them are in place. Carson set down his note cards. He looked over at the wings on each side. Left where Newman stood with his jacket buttoned. Right where McQueen had his hands. With his hands in his pockets, looking at nothing in particular. In particular. How are they? Carson asked. A break. His producer is a professional. Said. Carson knew exactly what that meant. Both men left the room. Met in the middle of the stage and then. The first time that night in front of 300 people and in the middle of millions of people watching at home. The clapping was warm and quick. The handshake lasted 2 seconds and McQueen was moving toward the sofa, did something that only a few others in the room saw it. His eyes went for a moment, just a little bit of a second, to the space between Newman's chair and Carson's desk. Newman was closer. There was nothing McQueen said. He sat down, changed his position just once. Almost undetectable, and settled. With the calm ease of a guy who have nothing to show for it. He had it all to prove, and everyone in that room people who mattered knew it. For the first few minutes, the section was precisely what it was supposed to be. Newman was kind and clear and full of details. McQueen was quieter and funnier in shorter bursts, letting silences do the work. Letting silences do the work in short spurts that other performers filled with sound. Carson went between them with the slick professionalism of a guy on the run. A master class in how to talk to people. Make it appear easy. Things were going nicely. Everything was going as planned. And Carson knew, with the special instinct of someone who has been in a room for decades, with people doing different variations of themselves, that there is something under it wasn't right. The grins were in the right places. The answers came at the right amount of time. All was professionally set up. That was it. That's exactly the problem. A real talk has some friction. Pauses, breaks, and moments of silence, where someone tries to say something and doesn't discover it right away. What he was. There was none of that in observing. It was too smooth and controlled. He had seen stress before. Fights, old wounds, opened again under studio lights. But this wasn't stress. This was a thing. Not finished, and it was going toward on the surface. He made up his mind. Not in the cards with notes. He leaned forward and put down his pencil, and asked in a voice that was easygoing in every manner that counted. Minimum. Tell me about a day on set, not the genuine version, a real day. Newman smiled and got started. The heat, the way the controlled burns work, logistics, tended to get a little more regulated than anyone wanted. He was a skilled storyteller who is specific and doesn't rush, with the kind of detail that shows real memory instead of prepared memory. Anecdote. He had been talking for maybe 40 seconds. Later, McQueen moved in his chair. It didn't happen that way. 4 words, calm, with a small smile that didn't reach his eyes. The audience laughed, the reflex laugh. Those folks who don't know what they just saw. Newman halted in the middle of a sentence. Looked to McQueen with a look on his face that only lasted a moment before he recalibrated it into something else. Not taking sides. No. The second burn went out on by itself. No one on the crew touched it. It was a tiny fix. It might have even been correct, but it hit the room. How minor corrections land when they are not really about being right, when they are about something that has been growing for 10 years and has finally found a spot to put itself. Newman changed his account, stayed kind, and kept the tail. McQueen leaned back a little bit. The correction was made, and they said nothing else. Carson knew it, and he paused for the first time that night, taking charge of the conversation. He began. seeing it. For another 4 minutes, the surface stayed. After that, Carson asked the question that broke it. After all. He said this without glancing at either of them. Straight, what do you think after seeing a movie like this? What sticks with you? Newman thought about this. Started to say something real regarding the staff, about how big what they had all tried together. McQueen let him continue. He then turned to Carson. Not to Newman, but to Carson. And in a voice more silent than anything he had said all. People remember one of you in the evening. Not both. The laughing came back. Shorter this time, unsure, like the kind that fills a room when no one knows what they just saw. Then it stopped. Newman's coffee cup stopped moving. Both hands curled around it in the middle of a turn as if the muscles that control the motion had gotten a signal from somewhere deeper and made a choice without talking to the rest of him about this. Not a time for little things. He did. Do not glance at McQueen right away. He looked at Carson, who said nothing. 14 seconds on live national TV in front of a live crowd of 300 people and millions of people watching at home. Johnny Carson sat down in his chair and said nothing at all. 14 seconds on live TV is not a break. It is not a beat. The amount of time it takes a producer to reach for a button for a commercial break. It is the how long it takes for an audience to shift from bewildered to really upset. It is long enough for 300 people in a room to become conscious at the same time that they are looking at something they weren't supposed to see. What they were intended to see. The producer in the later booth said he had his hand on that he had made the choice to push the button cut and then didn't. Not because he froze, because he felt that it would be wrong to cut away from this. That whatever was going on in front of that only happens once with those cameras. In 30. This was the first time in years of The Tonight Show when not once. Not like this. When Carson eventually moved, but it wasn't to talk. He put his note cards down with in a certain way. The act of a man who has made up his mind that whatever is written on them doesn't apply anymore to the talking to him right now. Then he stood up. He walked around the desk in 4,531 episodes. He had never done this before. His desk was always there for him, the permanent geography that makes up every Tonight Show how the conversation arranged itself. He did not go away. It was the only rule that had never needed to be said, since it had never had to be broken. He was near the brink of the stage, with his hands in his pockets, and looks out. For a moment, not at the crowd doing the look, just doing it. How a man looks out a window when he needs a second to find the proper wording. Come. He then turned around and leaned against the front of the desk, looking at both guys. Some evenings I sit at, he said, this desk, and I had no notion who I'm doing this for. The studio had its breath. I don't intend that as a joke. If you continue this for long enough, you'll start to wonder if the person sitting here is you, or just the part of you that learned how to sit down here. He glanced at McQueen. I guess you know what I mean, McQueen said. Nothing for a second, then a nod. Slowly. Carson was being watched by Newman. His expressiveness had changed in a way that was hard to put a name to. Not precisely moved. Rearranged around something he hadn't been expecting to see in this room. Tonight. Carson in the winter of 1971. Said, and his voice got quieter. Nearly personal. I sat in this dressing room before a show and felt nothing. I was in the room before the show and felt nothing. No. Not excited, not nervous, nothing. Like the whole thing had turned into a machine I was running without being inside it. No one. No, but no one inquired. You just go out. He stopped there. That's what he does. Said. For everyone. He got up straight. Walked back around the desk and sat down. Down. Newman set the cup of coffee down. He looked at McQueen. Not the fix. Looked from before, not the one that was set up. Two professionals managing without bias. A public appearance, but something. Not protected. Something that had been for a short time. Stopped doing math. Yes, he said. In a quiet way. That one word was all it took. To no one in particular, or maybe to both of them. McQueen looked at for a time. When he looked up, there was something unusual about his face. Not soft. He didn't do soft things. Not in front of the camera. Not in a place where everybody could see it, but less armored, with less protection around the edges. Stay with me, this is the section. That makes everything different. The news. In the end, it was never truly about the 7 words. McQueen hadn't talked about people. Remember that one of you hurt Newman. He said it because it was what he wanted to say. Thought about the private math he had been running for years in dressing rooms, on sets, and in the quiet of rooms and on sets and in the stillness of his home in the hills. Whenever the work paused down long enough for he was terrified that thoughts might come, not of Newman in particular, of not being important. The steady fade, the specific nightmare of the phone that slowly ceases ringing. Not a lot, not at all. Once, but steadily, one less call per month, until one day you notice there has been stillness for a time, and you just didn't want to call it that. His pocket index card had broken. Something that he normally kept closed. Locked. And in front of Carson, in front of Newman, in front of 3 million folks who thought they were seeing the crack had finally come out for the film's promotion. Shown. Newman got it since it was his crack, too. A different form, a different fault line, but the same important break under every a prosperous career. The doubt that it could end, that it was always at some level that was about to terminate. He didn't say anything of this. He didn't have to. At 11:04. At 11 p.m., the floor director's voice came through. A minute and a half. Carson nodded. Picked up his cards and glanced at them. Set them down again once. Men, he stated, the voice on the radio was warm and exact. Thanks for coming. The applause came right away and was unexpected. Full. The release of an audience that had been holding something without really not knowing what. The stage is in the wings. The management kept an eye on Newman and McQueen. Stand up, shake hands again, and keep it for half a second longer than the first. When the camera stopped filming, Carson led both men down the hall. Himself. A little office for making things, A coffee pot and 3 mugs, no one asked. They just went inside. They stayed for 23 minutes. Minutes. A production assistant, not Don, was waved off once. A sound engineer reported he could hear people working late nearby. Voices coming through the wall. Not words, just the beat. 3 men talking, sometimes 2 at the same time. For a short time, all 3. At the same time, quiet. What was mentioned in that room stayed in that room. When McQueen exited the building, he didn't. He had come in at the south entrance. Through. He walked out through the main door. Lobby, past the front desk, and out into the night like a guy who had made up his mind to take the long road. Newman, leaving a few minutes later, passed Carson close to the lift. Carson said something. Newman laughed. A true laugh, the kind that shows up out of the blue and can't be done. In the weeks after the NBC got more than 11,000 calls after the program. Letters regarding that part, which is strange. Volume for what had been formally logged as a normal promotion. Look. There was a reference of the movie in A. Some of them. Most of the letters talked about the silence. A few people said Carson is standing up. A lot of people who watched that they weren't sure of everything. What had happened on the TV that night. But that something about it had stuck with them. With them in a way that they couldn't fully to take into account. A viewer wrote a message to. There was only one phrase in Ohio. 4A. For a moment, they forgot they were on TV. Thanks for not cutting. Gone. Steve McQueen passed away in November the 7th of 1980. He was 50 years old. In the months after he died, as his a limited list of personal items was made. A white package was spotted among his things. No name on the front, no address for return. An index card inside. 4 words in big letters. But the card had been folded in a different way than how a man folds anything he carries. In a pocket on the chest. It had been folded up. How you fold something up to put it away. The way you fold something on purpose. You want to preserve without having to carry it every day. It had been put there. Deliberately, on purpose somewhere. Specific among his belongings, not thrown away, not shown, kept, who had put it there, and when and why. No one stated that some things are better left to the people that were there. If you like the story, subscribe right now. It takes 1 second, and that's how we tell stories like this one over and over. Let go. A remark below. Please tell me where in the world are you watching from? And tell me, do you have someone in your life that competed with for years when what you really wanted was just for them to? Do you understand? Because somewhere, someone needed to hear that tonight. Mask can